I've always been drawn to forgotten places. My name is Ethan, 32, and I work as a night security guard in Denton, Texas, a small American town where history and secrets hide behind every weathered brick. One evening, I was assigned to watch over an abandoned restaurant that once echoed with laughter and music. Its faded neon sign and dusty interior whispered of tragedies past. As I stepped through the creaking doorway, a shiver ran down my spine, and I sensed that my life was about to take a dark turn. I arrived at the abandoned diner on a humid Texas night, the air thick with memories of a once vibrant establishment. The building's exterior was scarred by time, peeling paint, broken windows, and a neon sign that buzzed faintly in the darkness. Every step on the cracked pavement echoed my unease as I made my way to the entrance. Inside, the musty odor of stale grease and decay filled my senses. I could almost hear echoes of old conversations and clinking glasses that once animated the crowded dining room. Walking slowly through the narrow hallways, I noted every detail: rusted kitchen utensils, faded photos on the walls, and scattered menus that hinted at a bygone era. The silence was occasionally broken by soft creaks and distant drips, as if the building itself was trying to speak. I felt as though the diner was alive, its very soul marred by past sorrow and secrets that begged to be told. My heart pounded, in time with the rhythm of my cautious footsteps. As I settled at my post near the main dining area, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Shadows seemed to move in the corners of my eyes, and a chill that had nothing to do with the cool night air crept over me. I began to question if I was truly alone or if the diner's tragic history had left behind more than memories. The stage was set for a night that would unravel mysteries I never dared to imagine. In the early hours, while patrolling the long, deserted corridors of the restaurant, I discovered remnants of a past life. In a small break room, I found a stack of old photographs, some showing smiling families and waitresses in crisp uniforms. Their eyes, now frozen in time, seemed to plead for someone to remember their story. I carefully picked up one photograph, feeling a deep connection with the faded image of a young woman whose smile masked hidden sorrows. Every item felt like a silent testimony of the diner's lost spirit. As I continued my rounds, the atmosphere grew heavier. I heard faint whispers that blended with the sound of my own breath. At first, I assumed it was the wind sneaking through broken windows, but soon the murmurs took on a more deliberate tone. I followed the sound into a dining room where rows of empty booths sat under dim, flickering lights. The chairs creaked in the silence as if shifting under an unseen weight, and the clatter of cutlery from another time resounded softly in my ears. I couldn't shake the feeling that every object in the restaurant held a secret. In the back of my mind, I recalled tales of a tragedy, a fire that had ravaged the diner decades ago, leaving behind souls trapped in sorrow. The evidence was all around me: a scorched table, a melted clock, and a pervasive scent of smoke mingled with decay. The place wasn't merely abandoned. It was haunted by echoes of pain, and I was now its lone witness. During my inspection, I came upon a heavy, locked door hidden behind a row of old booths. The door, embedded in a dark corner of the restaurant, seemed to call out to me. My hand trembled as I tried the rusted handle, the metal cold and unyielding to my touch. I felt a mix of dread and curiosity push me forward, urging me to uncover what lay beyond. I could sense that whatever was behind that door held the key to the diner's dark past, a past filled with sorrow and unanswered cries. After several minutes of forcing the door open, I managed to pry it slightly ajar. Inside, a small storage room revealed cluttered remnants of personal belongings: a child's toy, a frayed scarf, and even a broken wristwatch. Each object appeared deliberately left, as if someone had rushed out in a desperate bid for escape. I carefully gathered these items, feeling as though I was piecing together fragments of a forgotten tragedy. In that moment, the weight of responsibility pressed on me. These were not just relics, but silent cries for help. I spent the next hour sifting through the items, trying to make sense of the disarray. The room felt frozen in time, with dust motes dancing in the dim beam of my flashlight. There was an overwhelming sense of loss and despair, as though the souls behind these items were still searching for solace. The unanswered questions began to multiply. Who had once cherished these belongings? What terrible event had forced them to flee? I left the room with a heavy heart, aware that the answers lay buried in the shadows of the diner's past. Later that night, while retracing my steps in the main dining hall, I found myself drawn to an old cracked mirror hanging on a wall. Its surface was covered in grime, yet faint reflections of the past shimmered within. I paused in front of it, my breath catching as I gazed into the murk. In that moment, I saw not only my own worried face, but something else, a distorted visage, that flickered behind me. The face was gaunt, with hollow eyes and a twisted expression that spoke of unspeakable pain. It vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving me shaken and questioning my own sanity. I spent several minutes staring at the mirror, trying to comprehend what I had witnessed. Was it a trick of the light or a ghostly remnant of the diner's tragic history? The reflection felt real, and the chill it left was undeniable. I recalled the whispered tales of lost souls trapped in places of sorrow, and now I had a glimpse of that haunting truth. My mind raced with possibilities, each more disturbing than the last, as I struggled to reconcile the reality before me with the rational explanations I clung to. In the silent aftermath, the diner seemed to close in around me. The walls, once mere witnesses to laughter and joy, now exuded an oppressive gloom. I felt as though I had been marked, a silent participant in a narrative much larger than my own life. With every step I took, I could sense that the past was not at rest, and that I was now entangled in its dark embrace. The mirror's ghostly image had lit a spark of terror that would not soon be extinguished. The encounter with the mirror left me restless, and I decided to probe deeper into the restaurant's history. I began asking around in Denton, seeking any records or stories about the diner's tragic fate. In a small, dusty archive at the local library, I unearthed news clippings and old testimonies about a catastrophic fire that had claimed the lives of several staff and patrons many years ago. The articles were written in a plain, unassuming style, yet each word resonated with the raw emotion of a community still mourning its loss. I learned that the diner had been a beloved gathering spot, a place where simple meals and heartfelt conversations had once brought warmth to the soul. Armed with this new information, I returned to the restaurant with a mix of determination and dread. Every creak of the floorboards and every gust of stale air seemed laden with sorrow. I revisited the storage room and the dining hall, now piecing together the fragments of stories I had read. It wasn't long before I discovered a faded journal tucked away in a corner. The entries, written in plain handwriting, detailed the daily struggles and secret dreams of a young waitress. The words were simple, yet they conveyed a profound longing for a future that was cruelly stolen by fate. Reading those heartfelt lines, I felt an overwhelming sadness, as if I were hearing the final whispers of those lost souls. The journal mentioned a hidden room, a place where the darkest secrets were kept and where the fire might have been ignited. The idea of a hidden chamber within the diner sent chills down my spine. I realized that the diner was more than an abandoned building. It was a living memorial to pain and loss. The deeper I dug, the more I felt compelled to uncover every hidden corner, even if it meant confronting horrors that I wasn't sure I was ready to face. Compelled by the journal's revelations, I set out to find the rumored hidden room. My search led me to the back of the diner, where an old service corridor ran behind the kitchen. The narrow passage was dark and suffocating, lit only by the weak beam of my flashlight. The air was thick with dust and memories, and I could almost hear the muffled echoes of voices long silenced. Every step felt like a trespass into forbidden territory, yet I pressed on, driven by the need to understand the tragic secrets that haunted these halls. In the corridor, I noticed subtle clues: a partly torn curtain, a faded sign, and even a lingering smell of burnt wood that confirmed I was on the right track. The walls here bore scars of neglect and past calamities, and I sensed that this part of the diner had been deliberately sealed off. As I followed the corridor, the space grew narrower until I reached a heavy metal door hidden behind a stack of old crates. My hands trembled as I pushed it open, revealing a small, dimly lit chamber that reeked of smoke and sorrow. Inside that hidden room, I discovered more personal belongings. A child's drawing, a pair of work gloves, and even a handwritten note in simple language that spoke of fear and resignation. The note mentioned that someone had tried to warn others of an impending disaster. I could feel the presence of desperate voices from the past, their hopes and regrets echoing in the silence. In that claustrophobic space, the air seemed to press against me, and I knew that I was standing at the crossroads of history and horror, a moment that would forever alter my understanding of loss and lingering pain. The final hours of my shift brought an intensity I had never experienced before. As I made my way back through the diner, every shadow and every creak whispered secrets of the past. I felt the presence of those who had once filled these halls, their eyes watching me with silent sorrow. The distorted face I had seen in the mirror earlier returned in my mind, merging with the tragic stories I had uncovered. I began to realize that the diner was not merely haunted by memories, but by restless spirits desperate to be heard and acknowledged. My final patrol took me to the main dining room where the atmosphere was almost suffocating. The sound of my footsteps mingled with soft, almost imperceptible whispers that urged me to remember. I could see faint outlines of figures sitting in the booths, as if the souls of the lost had gathered for one last meal. In that moment, terror and compassion warred within me, each heartbeat a reminder that I was part of something far larger than my own existence. The weight of their stories pressed on me, and I vowed silently that their voices would not be forgotten. When my shift finally ended, I left the diner with a mix of relief and deep sorrow. The night had revealed horrors that I could neither explain nor erase from my mind. Even now, as I recount these events, I feel that chill and hear those soft whispers calling my name. The abandoned restaurant had become a part of me, a living testament to tragedy and an eternal reminder that some stories, however dark, must be told. I was driving along a lonely highway near Flagstaff, Arizona, when I first caught sight of the abandoned restaurant hidden in the twilight. My name is Connor, and I've always been drawn to mysteries. Something about that decaying building, a relic of a forgotten past, stirred an inexplicable pull in me. As I parked and stepped out into the cool desert air, a mix of excitement and dread filled me. Little did I know that behind its broken windows and silent walls, secrets older than time were waiting to be discovered. The night was unusually quiet as I approached the deserted building. The restaurant's exterior, cloaked in shadows, seemed almost camouflaged against the darkening sky. Faded neon letters and splintered wood told of years lost to neglect, while the crumbling facade whispered silent tales of what once was. I stepped onto the cracked pavement, my footsteps echoing in the vast emptiness, and felt an inexplicable chill ripple through me as if the wind itself mourned the forgotten past. Inside, the air was heavy with dust and a lingering scent of decay. Broken chairs and shattered tables lay scattered across a floor once filled with laughter and life. Every corner revealed remnants of a time when the place was vibrant. A half-burned menu pinned to a wall, yellowed newspaper clippings telling a story of sudden tragedy, and personal items left in haste. I moved slowly, my flashlight trembling in my grasp as it danced over these silent relics of history, each piece urging me to listen to its untold story. A strange, almost imperceptible sound drifted from deeper within the restaurant, a soft scraping that set my nerves on edge. I paused at the threshold of the dining area, trying to locate its source. The darkness seemed alive with secrets, and as my eyes adjusted, I could almost see fleeting shapes moving where nothing should be. The overwhelming sensation was not merely fear, it was a pull, a promise of revelations that beckoned me further, into the heart of the abandoned restaurant. I ventured further into the eerie interior, my mind racing with questions and my heart pounding with anticipation. In a dusty corner of the main hall, I discovered a collection of old photographs and faded posters, relics that spoke of a vibrant past now silenced by time. Each image portrayed smiling faces and lively gatherings, starkly contrasting with the desolation that now reigned. The remnants of laughter and joy clashed with the oppressive atmosphere, as if the building itself mourned its lost soul. Navigating through the maze of abandoned tables and broken fixtures, I felt an unsettling presence. It was as though, unseen, Eyes were watching my every move, judging my intrusion into a space that had long been abandoned by the living. The creaks of the worn floorboards mingled with distant ghostly murmurs, each sound reinforcing the idea that I was not alone. My pulse quickened with every step, and I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, was silently following me. I finally reached a narrow corridor lined with old newspaper clippings pinned haphazardly to the walls. The clippings detailed a tragic event that had shattered the restaurant's former glory, a fire that claimed many lives in a single devastating night. The headlines, written in bold, stark letters, recounted the horror in a manner that still sent shivers down my spine. As I absorbed the grim details, I realized that the echoes of that catastrophe still lingered, haunting every dark corner and forgotten memory of the place. In the midst of exploring the dim dining room, I stumbled upon a heavy, rusted door partially concealed behind an overturned buffet table. Something about the door's forlorn appearance beckoned me closer, as if it guarded a truth too painful to forget. With trembling hands, I pressed against the cold metal, my curiosity battling with an innate fear of what lay beyond. The door creaked open with great reluctance, revealing a narrow storage space that had been untouched for decades. Inside the cramped room, I found personal items scattered among piles of broken furniture and dust-covered memorabilia. There was a single tattered jacket draped over a chair, a small diary with pages yellowed by time, and a faded family portrait that exuded a sense of deep loss. Each item seemed to carry the residue of lives abruptly interrupted, a stark reminder of the moment tragedy struck and left its indelible mark on this forsaken place. I carefully picked up the diary, its handwritten words evoking feelings of despair and longing. As I read through the diary, the words spoke of love, loss, and an overwhelming sense of foreboding. The entries recounted daily struggles and whispered secrets that had long been buried under layers of dust and sorrow. Every sentence drew me deeper into the narrative of those who had once filled this restaurant with hope and laughter, only to be silenced by a cruel twist of fate. In that small, confined space, the past reached out to me, demanding to be remembered, and warning that some stories were best left undisturbed. The unsettling discoveries in the storage room ignited a deeper urge within me to uncover the restaurant's mysteries. Driven by a mix of dread and determination, I began retracing my steps back to the main hall, where a faint, repetitive sound now grew louder. It was a soft, rhythmic tapping emanating from a shadowy corner behind a row of broken booths. My heart hammered in my chest as I approached, each step feeling like a descent into a personal nightmare that I could not escape. When I reached the source, I discovered a peculiar scene. An old grandfather clock, its hands frozen in time, softly ticking despite the silence that otherwise enveloped the room. The ticking was accompanied by the faint sound of scraping, as if something or someone was trying to free itself from an unseen restraint. The clock's face, cracked and smeared with dust, appeared to be the centerpiece of a hidden ritual, its steady pulse echoing the heartbeat of a long-forgotten tragedy. I couldn't help but feel that this object was a bridge between the present and a sinister past. The eerie sounds and the haunted presence surrounding the clock sent waves of terror through me. Shadows seemed to twist and merge as I circled the clock, and for a moment I felt an icy hand graze my shoulder, though no one was there. The feeling was so real that I spun around, only to be met by the overwhelming silence of an empty room. That moment confirmed my growing suspicion. The abandoned restaurant was not merely a relic of history. It was alive with the restless spirits of those who had suffered within its walls, and their anguish was far from over. With each new discovery, the restaurant's tragic story unfolded before me like a grim tapestry. I returned to the narrow corridor where more remnants of the past awaited, determined to piece together the full narrative of the fateful night that changed everything. As I sifted through scattered scraps of paper and brittle clippings, a particular set of handwritten notes caught my attention. They described in simple, heart-wrenching language the final hours of a family trapped by the flames, their pleas for help echoing through the chaos of that terrible night. These notes led me to a concealed area behind the main kitchen, a small, hidden room I might have easily overlooked. The room was cramped and nearly suffocated by the weight of time, its walls adorned with faded scribbles and desperate messages. Among the debris, I discovered a box filled with keepsakes, a child's drawing of a happy family, a pressed flower, and even a delicate silver locket. Each item was a testament to lives abruptly ended, their memories preserved in the quiet desolation of the abandoned restaurant. I could almost feel the lingering sorrow and hope that refused to be forgotten. Sitting alone in that hidden room, I felt the weight of every soul who had ever passed through those doors. The whispers of despair and longing grew louder, mingling with the echo of my own heartbeat. In that moment, the restaurant transformed from a mere building into a living monument to tragedy, a place where time stood still and the past reached out with aching, invisible fingers. I knew then that the secrets held within these walls were far more profound than I had ever imagined, and that they demanded to be acknowledged, no matter the cost. Night deepened, and the atmosphere around me thickened with an almost tangible sense of foreboding. I decided to delve into the dining hall once more, compelled to understand the force that tied all these tragic memories together. As I roamed between the decaying booths, I began to notice a pattern. The very layout of the restaurant seemed designed to trap its occupants in a loop of despair. Every cracked wall and bent chair whispered of pain and isolation, as if the building itself was mourning a collective loss. In one secluded section of the hall, I encountered an area that felt distinctly colder than the rest, a small alcove where the temperature dropped sharply. There, illuminated only by the weak beam of my flashlight, was a peculiar arrangement of objects: a child's toy car, a pair of worn-out boots, and a faded napkin with a hastily scribbled note. The note simply read, "They are still here." Those words struck me like a shock, merging the past with the present in a way that was both eerie and deeply personal. I shuddered as the reality set in. This place was more than abandoned. It was a repository for souls unwilling to fade away. The chilling revelation pushed me to look harder, to seek out the origins of the mysterious note. I recalled a local legend about a family whose lives were consumed by a sudden inferno at the restaurant decades ago. In hushed tones, elders in nearby towns had spoken of their cries and unfulfilled promises of rescue. As I pieced together these fragments of history, with the items before me, I felt an overwhelming responsibility to bear witness to their pain. Their silent voices urged me to uncover every hidden truth, no matter how dark, and I could no longer turn away from the inevitable confrontation with the restaurant's ghostly past. As the final hours of that fateful night approached, I sensed that the restaurant was preparing to reveal its darkest secret. With a heavy heart and trembling hands, I retraced my steps along the desolate corridors, the sound of my own breathing the only constant companion. Every creak and distant whisper resonated with the agony of lost lives, and the oppressive air weighed me down like a shroud. I felt as though I were caught in a limbo between two worlds, the living and the dead, each step drawing me closer to an unknown climax. In the main dining hall, where the remnants of past celebrations now lay, in ruin, I experienced a final overwhelming encounter. A sudden piercing sound shattered the silence, a scream so raw and anguished that it seemed to emerge from the very walls. In that moment, the spectral presence that had haunted me throughout the night materialized fully before my eyes. A translucent figure, its features distorted by grief and despair, stood silently near an overturned table. Its eyes, filled with sorrow, locked onto mine, and for a heartbeat, I felt the crushing weight of every untold story, every forgotten life that had passed through this cursed place. As I slowly backed away, the apparition faded into the shadows, leaving behind an echo of its torment that would forever haunt my soul. I left the abandoned restaurant that night with a profound sense of loss and a promise to remember the voices that had reached out from the darkness. Though the building remained silent and still, I knew that its legacy of tragedy and lingering despair would live on, etched into my memory and whispered by the winds that still roamed those lonely corridors. I drove away with tears in my eyes and a resolve to honor the past, forever changed by the undeniable truth that some secrets are too heavy to be forgotten. After a grueling cross-country drive, I pulled off the highway near Albuquerque, New Mexico, and my eyes caught the eerie silhouette of an abandoned restaurant. My name is Lucas, and nothing prepared me for the terror hidden within those crumbling walls. The still desert air carried whispers of long-forgotten sorrows and secrets drawing me inside. With every cautious step I took on the creaking floor, I felt the weight of lost lives and forbidden rituals waiting to reveal their dreadful truth. The moment I stepped inside, the restaurant's decay enveloped me like a shroud. The entrance, marked by peeling paint and shattered glass, seemed to breathe a sorrowful welcome. Every creak of the worn floor echoed through the empty hall, as if the building itself mourned its tragic past. I wandered slowly among tables stained with time and dust, noticing the remnants of a life once filled with laughter and simple meals, now replaced by an oppressive silence that spoke of unimaginable loss. I moved deeper into the cavernous dining area where the air was heavy with the scent of stale grease and lingering despair. Faded photographs of smiling strangers clung to the walls like ghosts of happier days, while broken chairs and scattered cutlery testified to the chaos that once reigned here. A chill crawled up my spine as I imagined the lives that had been abruptly shattered, each piece of forgotten furniture a silent witness to a haunting past. The atmosphere was saturated with the eerie pulse of memories that refused to fade. As I explored further, a distant sound, a soft, almost imperceptible murmur, seemed to emanate from a shadowy corner of the room. My heart pounded with both fear and curiosity as I followed the sound, each step weighted by the secrets of the past. In that moment, I realized that this place was not merely abandoned. It was a repository of unspoken grief and unspeakable terror. I could almost feel the eyes of unseen presences watching me, silently judging my intrusion into their eternal sorrow. Pressing on with trepidation, I began to uncover signs of forgotten rituals and desperate pleas for salvation. In a neglected hallway lined with old menus and yellowed newspaper clippings, I found curious symbols carved into the wood, their meaning lost to time but echoing with a sinister promise. The dim light from my flashlight flickered over these markings, each stroke of the blade etched by unknown hands, conveying a ritualistic language of despair that sent shivers through my body. My exploration led me to a narrow, dust-choked corridor where remnants of past diners lay scattered, tattered napkins, half-burned candles, and a few stray utensils that glinted ominously in the dark. I could almost hear whispers carried on the dry desert wind, the murmurs of those who had once filled this space with their hopes and tragedies. The corridor's claustrophobic feel was accentuated by a sudden drop in temperature, and I felt an inexplicable urge to press on, driven by an insatiable need to uncover the dark truth buried within these walls. At the end of the corridor, I discovered a small, forgotten storage room. Here, the evidence of ancient rituals became even more disturbing. Strange artifacts lay abandoned among the detritus, a tattered apron stained with what looked like old grease and something darker. Mysterious talismans and even a scorched diary page clutched between broken trinkets. The room reeked of despair and time, and the oppressive silence was broken only by the soft rustle of wind filtering through cracked windows. I felt as if I had stumbled upon the very heart of the restaurant's long-held curse. In the storage room, I uncovered a series of personal belongings that painted a grim picture of lives abruptly upended. A faded uniform of a former waitress, a set of keys dangling from a rusted ring, and a solitary photograph of a family whose smiles were now forever lost, filled me with a sorrow I couldn't shake. Each item told its own story, a narrative of hope, tragedy, and ultimately, an unquenchable despair that had seeped into every corner of the building. I carefully examined the artifacts, my mind piecing together a mosaic of pain that spanned decades. As I turned over the fragile remnants in my trembling hands, I noticed strange symbols scrawled in the margins of an old journal. The entries, written in plain, hurried script, spoke of a cursed night when the restaurant became a stage for unspeakable horrors. They detailed rituals performed in the dead of night, desperate attempts to ward off a darkness that had invaded the very soul of the place. The raw emotion in those words was palpable, and it filled me with a sense of foreboding that grew heavier with every passing second. Haunted by the revelations in the journal, I left the storage room with a mix of dread and determination. I knew that I was treading on dangerous ground, one where the past was not at rest, and where every step might awaken a malevolent force. The air seemed charged with an unseen energy as I retraced my steps back to the dining area, now more convinced than ever that the restaurant was a living entity, its every corner harboring memories of pain that still demanded to be heard. In that moment, the building felt as if it were breathing around me, its ancient secrets stirring in the darkness. I found myself drawn to a secluded corner of the restaurant where the walls bore marks of desperate symbols and faded graffiti. The hurried scrawls appeared to be warnings from a time when the patrons and staff had known of a sinister presence lurking in the shadows. I could trace the lines of the messages with my fingertips, feeling the rough texture of layers upon layers of history. The words, though illegible in parts, evoked images of ritualistic practices and an unyielding force that had haunted every moment within these walls. The silence was suddenly shattered by a low, rhythmic tapping echoing from behind an old, heavy doctor that I hadn't noticed before. My pulse quickened as I hesitated at its threshold, the sound resonating like the heartbeat of something ancient and malevolent. With cautious determination, I pushed the door open and stepped into a cramped parlor where the remnants of a long-forgotten dining party lay scattered. Tables were overturned, and a dusty chandelier dangled precariously from the ceiling, its crystals casting eerie reflections in the dim light. Inside the parlor, the atmosphere was thick with the residue of old sorrows and the unmistakable scent of burned wood. I noticed a circle of peculiar symbols drawn on the floor in a faded mixture of ash and charcoal, a crude attempt at a protective barrier perhaps, or a desperate effort to summon help that never came. The air vibrated with an energy that both repelled and compelled me. I stood frozen for a moment, acutely aware of the painful echoes of past rituals reverberating through every particle of the space, and realized that the horror embedded in these walls was far from a mere myth. With mounting dread, I ventured deeper into the labyrinthine corridors of the restaurant, compelled by a force that felt both irresistible and dangerous. In one secluded alcove, I discovered a dusty, battered sign that once welcomed patrons to a family feast, its letters now twisted and marred by time. Nearby, a set of old menus hung crookedly on the wall, their items scrawled in faded ink that hinted at recipes of comfort, now transformed into grim relics of a cursed banquet. The remnants of what once was a place of joy now screamed of desolation and despair. The deeper I explored, the more tangible the presence of past horrors became. I found evidence of unspeakable acts. A broken wine glass stained with dark, unidentifiable remnants. A cracked mirror reflecting not just my own terrified eyes, but a fleeting glimpse of something else behind me. Each step I took seemed to echo the screams of forgotten souls, their agony imprinted into the very fabric of the establishment. The atmosphere was oppressive, each corner a silent witness to rituals that had been performed in the name of powers best left undisturbed. In one final act of desperation, I approached an old, crumbling staircase that descended into the basement. The stairs groaned under my weight as I descended into a darkness that swallowed even the meager beam of my flashlight. There, in the murk, I found scattered remnants of a long-lost era, rusted utensils, broken dishes, and remnants of ceremonial objects arranged in a haphazard yet deliberate pattern. The basement seemed to pulse with a life of its own, its very walls exuding a malevolence that promised the revelation of truth so terrible they might shatter the fragile barrier between the living and the dead. In the dank, oppressive basement, I sensed that I was on the brink of discovering the ultimate secret of this cursed restaurant. The air was heavy with the odor of decay and old secrets, and every step felt like a descent into an abyss of sorrow. I moved carefully between stacks of forgotten crates and shattered relics, my heart pounding in time with the creaks and groans of the old building. The oppressive darkness seemed to vibrate with the memories of rituals long past, urging me onward with a force that was as terrifying as it was inescapable. Deep in the recesses of the basement, I came upon a circular chamber with a crude stone altar at its center. The altar was stained with dark, dried marks that looked like remnants of ritualistic blood, and around it were arranged symbols that glowed faintly in the dim light. I could feel the intensity of the place, as though I had intruded into a sacred ground where forces beyond human understanding had once converged. The silence was profound, broken only by the soft whispers of the wind that seemed to seep through cracks in the walls, carrying with it the lament of 1,000 lost souls. I stood before the altar. The oppressive weight of the past crushed me. I felt as though the very souls of those who had suffered here were reaching out, their silent cries mingling with the steady drip of water from the ceiling. In that moment, the basement transformed into a shrine of sorrow and terror, and I knew that the restaurant's true horror was not in its abandoned state, but in the restless spirits and forbidden rituals that had been enacted here. The overwhelming presence of despair and supernatural energy filled me with dread, and I realized that the secrets of this place would forever haunt my soul. In the final throes of my unnerving exploration, I felt the full, crushing weight of the restaurant's dark legacy bearing down on me. With trembling resolve, I retraced my steps through the winding corridors, every surface and shadow whispering secrets of unending agony. I sensed that the very fabric of the building was alive with malevolence, each creak and murmur a testimony to the horrors that had unfolded within its walls. The oppressive silence was punctuated by inexplicable sounds, a distant echoing sob, the clatter of broken dishes that blurred the line between the living and the dead. In the heart of the main dining hall, as I prepared to make my escape, a spectral figure materialized before my eyes. The apparition, half-formed and shrouded in ethereal mist, exuded a sorrow so profound that it stilled my heart. Its eyes, hollow and laden with centuries of pain, met mine with an intensity that left me paralyzed. In that agonizing moment, the truth became undeniable. This place was the stage for horrors that transcended time, where ancient rituals and forgotten tragedies converged in a haunting ballet of despair. The figure's silent presence bore witness to the untold stories of suffering, imprinting its grief into my very soul. As I staggered back, desperate to flee the cursed relic, the spectral figure vanished as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving me alone with the crushing silence of the abandoned restaurant. My escape was a blur of terrified steps and frantic gasps, the echoes of its ghostly wail following me into the night. Even as I finally reached the safety of the open road, the memory of that otherworldly encounter clung to me like a curse. I now carry the burden of those lost souls, forever haunted by a place where terror refuses to rest, a truth that will echo in my mind long after the journey ends. Thank you very much for watching today's video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to stay informed when the next video comes out. And tell me, what did you think of today's stories? See you in the next video.